You did everything right. You went to the garden center, you spent real money. You dug the holes, you watered them in. You stood back and looked at what you'd built, and for a few weeks it was exactly what you'd imagined. Then winter came, and you walked outside in early spring, expecting to see life, expecting those plants to have survived, the way you were told they would, and there was nothing. Bare soil, empty borders, and that sinking feeling that you'd done it all for absolutely nothing. That is not your fault. What happened to you happens to millions of gardeners every single year. Not because they planted wrong, not because they didn't water enough, because they were sold the wrong plants entirely, plants designed to perform for one season and die. Plants that look beautiful in a pot on a shelf at the garden center and never survive a real winter in a real garden. That stops today. In this video, I'm giving you 13 flowering perennials, plants that don't just survive winter, they use it. They go dormant, they gather energy underground, and they come back in spring stronger, wider, and more floriferous than the year before. Year after year after year after year, without you replanting a single one. Let's get into it. 13 plants, all of them flower, all of them return every year without fail. All of them are available from most nurseries or online, whether you're gardening in the UK, across North America, New Zealand, or anywhere with a temperate climate. And the one at number 7, most gardeners walk straight past it at the garden center, assuming it's too difficult. It is the opposite of difficult. It is one of the most forgiving plants I have ever grown, and it blooms for nearly 5 months without stopping. But we'll get there. Before we start, drop your country or climate in the comments below. A garden in coastal Ireland is nothing like a garden in inland Canada, and I want to make sure this advice fits where you actually are. Tell me where you're gardening. I read every single one. Let's go. Plant 1, Echinacea, coneflower. If there is one plant that symbolizes everything this channel stands for, it is Echinacea, common name, coneflower. And once you know it, you will see it everywhere, because it is absolutely everywhere in the best possible way. Picture a late summer border. The heat has flattened everything else. The annuals you spent money on in spring are leggy and burnt, and there, standing perfectly upright, covered in bold daisy-like flowers in shades of deep pink, burnt orange, and white, is Echinacea, not struggling, thriving. Here is what most people don't know about this plant. It actually performs better in leaner soil. Most gardeners assume you need to feed and pamper perennials to get the best out of them. With Echinacea, excessively rich soil can produce floppy, weak plants. Average to moderately fertile, well-drained soil produces upright, strong floriferous ones. That is a counterintuitive truth that most garden centers will never tell you, because they want you buying compost and fertilizer. The facts: hardy in most temperate climates, USDA zone 3 to 9 depending on variety, with the most common species, Echinacea purpurea, rated RHS H5, meaning it handles all but the very harshest UK winters without protection. Blooms from midsummer right through to early autumn, that is 10 to 14 weeks of color, spread slowly by self-seeding over time, meaning one plant can give you seedlings around it within 2 to 3 seasons at no cost to you. The unexpected benefit, the seed head. Do not cut Echinacea back in autumn. Leave those architectural cones standing through winter. They feed birds for months and they look extraordinary covered in frost. The one critical tip: plant in full sun. Echinacea will tolerate partial shade, but it reaches its full potential and its full height of 60 to 90 centimeters depending on variety, in a position that gets at least 6 hours of direct sun per day. Imagine a late summer afternoon. You walk out to your garden with a cup of tea, and the borders are still alive, still full of color, while everything around the neighborhood has given up for the year. That is what Echinacea does for you. Plant 2, Salvia nemorosa, woodland sage. This is the plant that makes garden designers look like geniuses. Salvia nemorosa, woodland sage, produces dense spikes of violet-blue flowers that appear in late spring, and if you cut them back hard after the first flush, they come again in late summer. 2 full waves of color from a single plant every single year. Most people don't know that Salvia nemorosa is one of the most drought-tolerant flowering perennials in existence. Once established, and establishment takes 1 season, this plant handles extended dry spells with remarkable resilience. If you have a dry, sunny border that has defeated everything you've tried, this is your answer. The facts: hardy in cold winters, USDA zone 4 to 8, fully rated for all UK conditions, reaches 40 to 60 centimeters in flower, blooms twice per season if deadheaded promptly, spreads slowly, forming a wider clump each year, never becoming invasive. The unexpected benefit: the bees. Salvia nemorosa is one of the most pollinator-attractive plants you can grow. On a warm day in early summer, a well-established clump will be covered, absolutely covered, in bees from the moment the first flowers open. The one critical tip: hard deadhead after the first flush. Do not just snip off the spent tips. Cut the entire flower stem back to the basal foliage. It looks brutal. Within 4 weeks, you have a second flush of flower spikes emerging, and the plant rewards that confidence every time. If you're watching this and you're not yet subscribed, YouTube will stop showing you this channel, not slow it down. Stop entirely. Hit subscribe now. It is free. It takes 3 seconds, and it means this information keeps reaching you every time we publish. Subscribe. Then let's keep going. Plant 3. Geranium, hardy cranesbill. Not the pelargonium. Not the tender frost-sensitive geranium you see in pots outside every cafe and restaurant in summer, the one that dies the moment the temperature drops. That is not what I'm talking about. Hardy cranesbill true geranium is an entirely different plant, and it is one of the most versatile ground-covering perennials you can grow. Picture the edges of a shaded border, the spots where nothing seems to want to grow, too dark for most flowering plants, too dry under the canopy of a nearby shrub. Hardy geranium fills those spaces completely, low, spreading, completely smothering the soil beneath it, and covered in small but abundant flowers, usually in shades of violet, pink, or white, from late spring right through to late summer. Here is what most people don't know. There are hundreds of varieties of hardy geranium, and several of them have a trick called second flowering. Geranium roseanne, one of the most awarded garden plants of the last 20 years, blooms continuously from early summer right through to the first frosts. Not 2 flushes, continuously. I have had roseanne in my garden for over 10 years, and it has never once disappointed me. The facts: most varieties are hardy in USDA zone 4 to 8, fully rated for cold winters, spreads 60 to 90 centimeters per plant when established. The clump can be divided every 3 years to give you free plants for other parts of the garden. One plant becomes several with 15 minutes of work. The unexpected benefit: weed suppression. A well-established hardy geranium produces such dense, low foliage that it significantly reduces the ability of weeds to establish beneath it. Less mulching, less weeding, less maintenance. The one critical tip: after the first main flush of flowers, cut the whole plant back by 2/3. It looks alarming. It grows back within 3 weeks, and it often flowers again before summer ends. Plant 4. Peonies, Peonia. If you want one plant that stops people in their tracks, one plant that makes visitors to your garden actually pause and say something, it is a peony. The flowers are extraordinary. Large, full, often fragrant, in shades from pure white through blush and coral to the deepest, richest red. They appear in late spring to early summer, and they are without question among the most spectacular flowering events in any temperate garden. And here's what most people don't know: a peony planted in the right place, in the right conditions, can live for 50 years or more. There are peonies flowering in gardens today that were planted by previous generations. This is not a plant you buy and replace. This is a plant you plant once and it gives back for decades. The facts: fully hardy in cold winter climates. USDA zone 3 to 8. Individual herbaceous varieties typically bloom for 1 to 2 weeks in late spring, but if you grow early, mid-season, and late varieties together, you can extend that display across 4 to 6 weeks. They do not spread aggressively, they grow slowly wider over years, becoming more and more generous with their flowers each season. The unexpected benefit: cut flowers. A single established peony clump produces enough flowers to fill vases across your entire home, with stems left over. At typical florist prices, that is a meaningful saving per season from a single plant. The one critical tip, and this is critical: do not plant peonies too deep. The red eyes, the growing buds at the base of the plant, must sit no more than 2 to 3 centimeters below the soil surface. Plant them deeper, and they produce beautiful foliage and never a single flower. It is the most common peony mistake, and it is entirely avoidable. Imagine, late spring, a Sunday morning, walking out to your garden and seeing peonies in full bloom. That combination of scale and scent and color is something most gardeners only experience at flower shows. You can have it in your own garden for the rest of your life. Quick question for you, and I want a real answer in the comments. Have you ever lost a plant over winter that you were told was hardy? What was it, and where in the world were you gardening when it happened? Tell me below. You're absolutely not alone, and the answer is almost always the same thing. Wrong plant, wrong information. Plant 5. Nepeta, catmint. Nepeta is one of the most underused plants in domestic gardens, and I have never understood why. It produces clouds, and I mean that word literally, clouds of small lavender blue flowers from early summer onwards. The overall effect from a distance is of soft, hazy blue drifting across your borders. It is one of the most beautiful visual effects any garden plant produces, and it achieves it with zero effort from you. Most people don't know that Nepeta is almost indestructible once established. Cold winters, dry summers, compacted soil, coastal exposure, Nepeta handles all of it. The RHS has given multiple varieties the award of garden merit precisely because they perform consistently across a wide range of growing conditions in temperate climates. The facts: most varieties are hardy to USDA Zone 3 or 4 depending on the cultivar, blooms from early summer and, if cut back after the first flush, again in late summer, that can mean 14 to 18 weeks of color across the season. Height varies by variety from 30 centimeters for compact forms to over a meter for larger ones. Spreads steadily but is never invasive. The unexpected benefit: the scent. Run your hand through Nepeta foliage on a warm afternoon and you release a clean, herbal fragrance that fills the air around you. This is a plant that engages more than just your eyes. The one critical tip: the Chelsea chop. In late spring, roughly when the Chelsea flower show takes place in the UK, cut your Nepeta back by half. It delays flowering by 2 to 3 weeks, staggers the season, and produces a much more compact, bushy plant that doesn't flop. Plant 6. Astrantia, masterwort. This is a plant that photographs so beautifully that people assume it must be difficult. It is not difficult. Astrantia is one of the most reliably self-sufficient perennials you can grow, and its flowers, intricate, star-shaped with a collar of papery bracts in white, pink, or deep wine red, are unlike anything else in the garden. Picture a slightly shaded border, a spot that gets morning sun but is sheltered from the harshest afternoon heat. Astrantia in full bloom in midsummer, its flowers held on wiry stems above deeply cut foliage. The detail you see when you look closely: each flower is a masterpiece of structure. From a distance, the overall effect is of effortless cottage garden beauty. Most people don't know that Astrantia actually prefers moisture-retentive soil. While most perennials want good drainage, Astrantia is the exception. It thrives in a border that holds a little moisture, performs near ponds and water features, and tolerates the kind of damp conditions that defeat many other plants. The fact: hardy in USDA Zone 4 to 7, blooms from late spring to midsummer, self-seeds gently, not aggressively, meaning new plants appear around the parent over time at no cost. One established clump can be divided every 3 to 4 years, giving you multiple free plants. The unexpected benefit: it is one of the best cut flowers a garden produces. Astrantia lasts well in a vase, and florists charge significantly for it, precisely because its unusual structure and good shelf life make it highly sought after. The one critical tip: deadhead regularly. Removing spent flowers promptly encourages fresh buds and extends the flowering season. Neglect this and the plant goes to seed more quickly and stops producing new blooms. Think of one person in your life who is still spending money every spring on plants that don't make it through winter. One person who would watch this video and finally understand why that keeps happening to them. Send them this video right now. No message needed, just the link. That one action might genuinely change how they garden forever. Plant 7. Digitalis grandiflora, perennial foxglove. I said at the start that we had one plant most gardeners walk straight past because they assume it's too difficult. This is that plant. Foxglove has a reputation problem. Most gardeners know the common foxglove, Digitalis purpurea, the biennial that flowers magnificently in its second year and then dies. And because of that, many people assume all foxgloves are fleeting, unreliable, not worth the investment. They are wrong. There are fully perennial foxglove species, Digitalis grandiflora, also known as yellow foxglove, and Digitalis lutea, that come back every single year from established roots. They are not difficult. They are not temperamental. And unlike the common biennial foxglove, you plant them once and they return reliably season after season. Most people don't know this because the labeling at most garden centers is genuinely poor. Biennial and perennial varieties often sit next to each other on the shelf with no clear distinction. Look specifically for Digitalis grandiflora. It is the most widely available true perennial species, and it carries the RHS Award of Garden Merit. The facts: Digitalis grandiflora is hardy in USDA Zone 3 to 8, reaches 60 to 90 centimeters in flower, more compact than the common foxglove. Blooms in early to midsummer, typically for 6 to 8 weeks. Prefers partial shade, one of the few tall flowering perennials that genuinely performs well in a less sunny position. Self-seeds modestly, creating new plants around the parent without spreading aggressively. One important note: all parts of foxglove are toxic if ingested. This is well documented and worth knowing, particularly if you garden with young children or pets. The unexpected benefit, height and structure in shade. In a world of low border plants, perennial foxgloves give you genuine vertical drama in the spots that most challenge gardeners. They work at the back of a shaded border, under the canopy of open trees, in the kind of difficult positions that stump most people. The one critical tip: do not deadhead entirely. Remove the main central spike once it finishes, but leave the smaller side spikes. They continue flowering for several more weeks and produce the seed that gives you the next generation of free plants. I want to know, before you watch this video, how many of these plants had you actually grown? Drop a number in the comments. 1, 3, none, and tell me which one you're most surprised to learn is actually a reliable perennial. I'm genuinely curious. Plant 8, Rudbeckia, Black-Eyed Susan. Late summer in a garden can feel like a slow fade. Spring is gone, the first flush of summer flowers is over, and there is a gap, a long dull gap, before autumn color arrives. Rudbeckia fills that gap completely. From late summer right through to the first hard frosts, Rudbeckia produces bold golden yellow daisy flowers with a dark, near-black central cone. The effect is warm, generous, and visually striking in a way that almost no other late-season plant can match. Most people don't know that Rudbeckia is one of the most resilient perennials in difficult conditions. It tolerates clay soil, it handles periods without rain once established, and it tolerates the kind of neglect that kills more delicate plants outright. The facts: hardiness varies by species. Rudbeckia fulgida, the most commonly grown perennial species, is reliably hardy in USDA zone 3 to 9. Blooms from late summer to the first frosts, 8 to 12 weeks, reaches 60 to 90 centimeters, spreads steadily by expanding its crown over time. One plant becomes a larger clump within a few seasons. The unexpected benefit: winter interest. Leave the seed heads of Rudbeckia standing through winter. The dark cones are genuinely beautiful, covered in frost or snow, and they provide food for seed-eating birds throughout the coldest months. The one critical tip: sight it in full sun. Rudbeckia in partial shade becomes taller, floppier, and produces fewer flowers. Full sun produces compact, upright, floriferous plants that generally need no staking. Plant 9, Agapanthus, African lily. This is the plant that makes your garden look designed. Agapanthus produces tall, elegant stems topped with spherical clusters of tubular flowers, blue, violet, or white, that appear in mid to late summer and look, frankly, like something from a botanical garden. Most gardeners assume this means they are difficult. They are not, once you understand one key thing about choosing the right variety. Most people don't know that hardiness in Agapanthus depends entirely on whether you choose a deciduous or an evergreen variety. The evergreen types are only reliably hardy in mild climates, generally USDA zone 8 and above. But the deciduous varieties, particularly the headborne hybrids and similar cultivars bred specifically for cold tolerance, are reliably hardy to USDA zone 6 and some to zone 5 with good drainage and mulching. If you garden in a colder climate, this single piece of information is everything. Choose deciduous. The foliage dies back in winter, and that is exactly what allows the crown to survive. The facts: deciduous varieties reliably hardy to USDA zone 6, some to zone 5. Blooms for 6 to 8 weeks in mid to late summer. Spread slowly, forming an increasingly wide, impressive clump over years. The unexpected benefit: if you garden in a colder climate where even hardy Agapanthus is borderline, grow it in a large container. Bring it under a frost-free shelter for winter. It will flower magnificently on a sunny terrace or patio for years, and you have complete control over its survival. The one critical tip: plant in the sunniest position you have, and ensure excellent drainage. Both sun and drainage are essential for reliable flowering and winter survival. A warm, well-drained position makes the difference between a plant that thrives and one that barely survives. Imagine a midsummer evening, the last of the sun hitting your garden, and those blue flower globes catching the light at the top of their long stems. Elegant is the right word, and it comes back and does exactly the same thing every single year. If you've made it this far and you haven't subscribed, YouTube will genuinely stop showing you this channel. Not slow it down. Stop. Hit subscribe now. It's free. It always will be, and every video we publish will reach you automatically. Plant 10, Phlox paniculata, garden phlox. Phlox is the scent of summer. There is nothing else quite like it. Garden phlox, Phlox paniculata, produces large, domed clusters of flowers in midsummer, in shades from pure white through every tone of pink, coral, and lavender, and it carries a fragrance that fills the surrounding air on warm evenings. If you have ever walked through a garden at dusk in summer and been stopped by a scent you couldn't immediately place, it was almost certainly phlox. Most people don't know that phlox is one of the longest blooming perennials in the summer garden. A well-grown clump flowers for 6 to 8 weeks. If you grow early, mid and late season varieties together, you can have phlox in continuous bloom across much of summer. The facts. Hardy in USDA zone 4 to 8, reaches 80 to 120 centimeters in full growth, divides well, one clump gives you several free plants every 3 years. A mature clump can produce many flower heads per season. The unexpected benefit, evening fragrance. Phlox is a plant for people who actually spend time in their garden in the evenings. As the temperature drops and the air becomes still, the fragrance intensifies. It is one of the finest sensory experiences a garden can provide. The one critical tip: divide it regularly and give it good air circulation. Every 2 to 3 years, lift your phlox in early spring and divide the clump. Replant the outer portions, discard the woody center. Good airflow between plants also reduces the risk of powdery mildew, which phlox can be prone to in humid conditions. This simple practice keeps the plant vigorous and maintains the quality of the flower heads. Plant 11 Kniphofia, red hot poker. This is a plant that earns its name. Kniphofia produces tall, upright flower spikes in combinations of red, orange, and yellow, often on a single stem, shifting from one color at the tip to another at the base, that stand like torches above strap-like, grassy foliage. The visual impact from a distance is immediate and striking. Most people don't know that modern Kniphofia varieties have been bred specifically to extend the blooming period far beyond what the traditional forms offered. Where the classic red-hot poker flowered briefly in midsummer, contemporary varieties such as flamenco provide flowers from early summer through to early autumn. That is a completely different plant for practical purposes. The facts: hardiness varies by variety. Most garden Kniphofia are reliably hardy in USDA zone 5 to 9, though some newer varieties push into zone 4. Reaches 80 to 120 centimeters depending on variety. Forms expanding clumps over time. Tolerates drought well once established. The unexpected benefit: structural winter presence. Even without flowers, the strap-like foliage of Kniphofia provides structure and greenery through winter when most herbaceous perennials have disappeared entirely below ground. The garden looks occupied, not abandoned. The one critical tip: in colder climates, do not cut the foliage back hard in autumn. Tie the outer leaves loosely over the crown of the plant. This protects the growing point through winter. In spring, remove the dead outer leaves and the new season's growth emerges freely. In very cold zones, a layer of dry mulch over the crown adds additional protection. Plant 12, Veronicastrum virginicum, Culver's root. This is the plant that landscape architects reach for when they want drama without effort. Veronicastrum virginicum produces tall, elegant spires of tiny flowers, white, pale pink or pale blue, that rise to 120 centimeters or more in a good growing season. The effect is architectural, precise. A plant that looks as though someone designed it specifically to provide height and structure in a planting scheme. Most people don't know this plant exists. It is genuinely underused in domestic gardens, and I think the reason is the name. It sounds complicated. It is not complicated. It is one of the least demanding tall perennials I have ever grown, and it is native to the eastern United States, which tells you something about how tough it is in real-world conditions. The facts: hardy in USDA zone 3 to 8. Blooms in early to midsummer for 6 weeks or more. Typically reaches 90 to 150 centimeters in full growth. Does not spread aggressively. Stays where you put it, becoming a wider, more impressive clump each year. It is worth noting that in very shaded or very rich soil conditions, it can become tall enough to require some support. In full sun with average soil, it generally stands well on its own. The unexpected benefit: the pollinators. Veronicastrum is one of the most intensively visited flowering plants in a summer garden. Research has documented over 40 species of bees visiting Culver's root. On a warm afternoon in early summer, a mature plant in full bloom is remarkable to watch. The one critical tip: full sun and consistently moist soil give you the best results. Veronicastrum originates from wet meadows and stream banks. It appreciates moisture. If your border tends to dry out, water it through the first summer until established, and it will reward you well. Plant 13, Persicaria amplexicaulis red bistort. I have saved this one for last deliberately. because Persicaria amplexicaulis is, in my experience, the single most reliable flowering perennial available to gardeners in temperate climates. It flowers from midsummer to the first hard frosts, not 8 weeks, not 10 weeks, 4 to 5 months of continuous flower. I have had Persicaria in my garden for many years. I have never fed it, I have divided it twice. It has never failed to flower. It has never required staking, spraying, or any form of intervention. Like most herbaceous perennials, its foliage dies back in winter. That is normal, and it is part of what makes it so cold hardy. But the crown survives, and every spring it returns, grows quickly, and within weeks is on its way to flowering again for another 4 to 5 months. The flowers are slender, upright spikes in shades of crimson, deep pink or white, held above large, handsome leaves on plants that reach 90 to 120 centimeters. From a distance, a mature clump in full bloom looks like a cloud of color suspended above the border. Up close, the detail of each individual flower spike is genuinely beautiful. Most people don't know Persicaria because it is not glamorous in the way that Peonies or Agapanthus are glamorous. It does not have one spectacular moment. What it has is endurance, consistency, an almost unreasonable willingness to produce flowers continuously for an extraordinary length of time. The fact, hardy in USDA zone 4 to 8, blooms from midsummer to first frost, 16 to 20 weeks in a good season. Tolerates partial shade, clay soil, and moist conditions that would defeat many other perennials. One clump divides into multiple plants every 3 years, giving you free stock for the rest of the garden. The unexpected benefit, it is one of the easiest perennials to propagate. Lift a clump in early spring, divide it into sections and replant. Each section grows away quickly. One original plant can give you a full border's worth of stock over a few seasons. The one critical tip, give it space. Persicaria amplexicaulis is generous in its spread. A mature clump can reach 90 to 120 centimeters wide. Plant it where it has room to develop, and it will reward you with more continuous flower than any other plant on this list. Imagine early autumn. Everything else is winding down. The annuals are over. The roses have had their last flush. The garden is beginning its retreat toward winter. And Persicaria is still in full bloom. Still covered in flower spikes. Still doing exactly what it was doing in July. That is a plant worth knowing. You came into this video perhaps still carrying the disappointment of a winter that took everything you planted. I want you to leave it understanding something clearly. That was not your failure. That was a failure of information. You were sold plants that were never going to survive. And that happens to good gardeners, experienced gardeners every single year because the system is not set up to tell you what actually works. Now you know. 13 plants, all of them flower, all of them return, all of them grow stronger, wider, and more generous every single season without you starting over. These are not short-term investments. These are permanent additions to your garden plants that will be flowering for years and years to come. Plant one of these this season, just one. If that's where you are right now, watch what happens in spring when it comes back. Watch what happens in year 2 when it comes back bigger, and then only then you'll understand why this is how gardening is supposed to feel. Now, 3 things before you go. Hit subscribe. Every video we publish will reach you automatically, and every video we publish is built around the same promise: plants that work, advice that's honest, and a garden that keeps getting better without you starting over. Hit the bell so you never miss a new video, and drop one comment below. Tell me which plant from this list you're putting in the ground first, and tell me where in the world you're gardening, because every climate is different and I want to make sure this channel keeps serving where you actually are. This is your garden, this is your season. Go plant something.